So we're looking at part 16 of the essentials, looking at essential oils, their history, and their use. Just a reminder that the information here is educational in nature and is just another tool in your health tool belt for maintaining wellness and or getting well if one is sick. It's not to be construed as medical advice, and that you always need to conduct your own due diligence on any new modality or treatment option or recommendation that may come your direction to see if it's right for you. And it's not exhaustively comprehensive, but efforts have made to be inclusive of as much data as possible in the time allowed. So tonight we're going to be looking at peppermint. So the peppermint plant genus is Mentha, and it has a long history of use. It's one of the oldest European medicinal herbs. The Egyptians used it. The Chinese and Japanese have used it historically for long periods of time. The Greeks used it during their funeral rites, embalming, just to help kind of take the scent or the decay scent away during that process before internment, along with rosemary and myrtle. The Bible actually references peppermint in the form of the mint. Peppermint is a kind of a melding of different species of hybridization to get the peppermint from the mint, but it's referred to in Matthew 23:23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. So they were just basically, Christ is illustrating here. It's in a list of things that had some value, and they paid tithe on it, but they're more concerned about exacting those details than actually exacting the things that God finds important. While tithe is important, it's not to be left to be the only thing done, especially with matters of the law and judgment, mercy, and faith. So it was just recorded there as something that was important from an economic standpoint, and likely also from a medicinal standpoint during that time and day and age. So it became more highly used during the 17th century. It's a cross between wild mint species. So the peppermint is a cultivar or a hybridization of multiple different types of wild mint species. We actually grew some mints that was called chocolate mint, had kind of a brown tinge to it. So there are a wide variety of different mint species, but peppermint is one in particular. So the part that's used are the leaves, so the foliar parts, not the flowers as in some things. And the extraction is through a steam distillation process. So you can see a home distiller. So commercial distillers are going to be much larger than that. Steam distillation, you would put your plant material in the upper narrow cylinder, and it would be having hot water steamed through it from the bottom element there, and then it would distill out the portions, the fractions that you would want. So the primary molecules are menthol. So menthol is well known for its properties, cooling properties. Menthone, so you can see this diagram there comparing both the menthol and the menthone. So the icy scent comes from the menthone, the cooling sensation comes from the menthol, and they're both on 6 carbon hydrocarbon rings, and the only difference is the presence of a double bond there with an oxygen attached to it versus a hydroxyl on the outside there. So those are the primary differences. So one atom difference, one molecule or atom actually difference in that molecule changes its properties. So that tells you the specificity of molecules, whatever type of molecule they are. It's actually the same orientation. It's on the same carbon. It just as a double bonded oxygen has the icy sensation and scent, and the menthol has the cooling sensation. So very, very different. Then there's the alpha and beta pinene, which is a menthol acetate. So we talked about the alpha and beta pinene last time, and the molecule to the right there is a chain hydrocarbon. So hydrocarbon just means it's a series of carbons with with hydrogens and occasionally other side groups like the oxygen and sometimes nitrogen and other molecules as well. And an organic molecule is defined as a molecule that was carbon-based. And that's different than saying that something is organically grown versus an organic molecule. There are a lot of synthesized organic molecules that are toxic. There's even naturally occurring organic molecules that are toxic. But organic practice in gardening and organic molecule from a molecular standpoint are completely two different things. One's a chemistry definition and other is a method of agriculture and permaculture application that doesn't use man-made chemicals or even toxic chemicals that are derived from natural sources that do not biodegrade. So that's an important distinction. So some key actions of peppermint. It's anti-inflammatory in nature, which is helpful because there's lots of inflammation. The underlying basis of most disease processes known today is inflammation. So if you can keep inflammation under control, it helps to mitigate and reduce the disease processes. And of course, if you can address the underlying cause of that inflammation, that's even better. It has some analgesic or analgesic properties, and that functions as a painkiller. So it can help with pain killing. Anti-spasmodic, so it's going to help prevent smooth muscle and skeletal muscle from seizing up. Has a warming sensation in addition to a cooling sensation, so it can work both directions. It's invigorating, and so in that respect is stimulating. So it functions also as a vasoconstrictor and expectorant. It blends well with wild orange and grapefruit essential oils. So you can see those two illustrated here as well. The safety is much like is one that you want to pay attention to as far as diluting. You don't want to use it neat. You want to avoid using it in the evening because it does have some stimulating properties. It could be helpful in replacing other substances that you wouldn't want to use in your body, like caffeine, in the sense that peppermint could help you stay awake at night if you're driving and have no ill side effects. Unlike caffeine has addictive qualities and has an up and a down crash that people experience with headaches, etc. And you know you're addicted if you can't live without it. So caffeine is something that you want to steer clear of. And peppermint might be an alternative if one is needing to maintain wakefulness when one is drowsy. Primary uses, so helps in maintaining alertness. So you can use it aromatically, so that's using it to breathe in, so you can diffuse it with a diffuser, or you can inhale it from the palms of your hands. So remember that your hands and feet both have thick skin in them, so they have an additional layer of skin that helps keep them protected. Our hands and our feet get the highest use over time, and so you can put that in there neat without having it burn your skin, as opposed to other areas that have thin skin or mucous membranes. You can use it topically under the nose or the back of the neck, and you'd use that diffused or diluted rather with a carrier oil. It can replace caffeine without the same side effects or addiction for helping to maintain alertness. It may not have the same level of alertness provision, but you don't need a jolt. The caffeine kind of has a pharmacological-like effect. Typically, plant substances, not all, because there are hard drugs that are very potent that can cause very pharmacological-like effects, psychedelic, etc. Whereas typically plant material of a more benign nature are powerful in their own right, but take longer to come about their activity and aren't as just quick and fast in their action, although they're powerful. So they have tonic type effects. So fevers and hot flashes. So that's kind of two different ends of the spectrum. One is hormonally based. One is a body mechanism of reducing a microbial load of some sort, whether it be viruses or bacteria, because they can't withstand the fevers. So fever treatment is important. You don't want to allow it to get too high, but at the same time, that heat can also function to disable the pathogen. So topically, dilute it with a carrier oil and apply it to the back of the neck, to the spine and feet bottoms. You can use a roll-on like you see here, or just dab it on your fingers and massage it in. For young children, sometimes the feet is the best place to do that application because it's thicker skin and the rest of their body skin is going to be more tender, sensitive perhaps. So just a way to help them get an essential oil applied to their system without hurting them in any way. Autism, interesting thing that can be beneficial is topical use, dilute and use in the back of the neck, spine, and feet bottoms for autism symptoms. And there's a whole spectrum of autism from very mild to very severe. And actually diet can play a huge role in that. And early childhood pharmacological interventions have been shown to be kind of triggers of that situation and that spectrum disorder and cause developmental delays and the like. So topical dilution and then with a carrier oil and using on the back of the neck, spine, and feet bottoms is a good way to help out autism. Cravings. So aromatic diffusion through the cupped hands or in a diffuser. You can also topically apply it beneath your nose prior to or in between meals to help suppress appetite. So that could be helpful if you're wanting to reduce your caloric intake. If you're actually very active and busy and working hard, caloric intake can be difficult to maintain. If you think about the explorers that opened up the American West, for example, coming across in the expedition of Lewis and Clark, they didn't lose a single person going to and from the Pacific coast, which is quite amazing in its own right. But the amount of food that they consumed and ate during that period of time and what they ate was just amazing. But they were able to do that largely because of the high level of activity they maintained every day just to get through each day. Today, we just don't see that happening for the most part. Very sedentary lives. It's helpful in hives and allergies. So on the right, you can see a person who's broken out in hives on their forearm. Here, very irritating, itchy kind of sensation. You can use it internally in a capsule. Just put several drops in a gel capsule or a veggie cap. Gel refers to the fact that it's gelatin based. So if you're avoiding animal products, you want to make sure you look for bovine gelatin as a capsule on any supplements you might be taking in that form, and avoid them if that's important to you, and look for veggie caps. Topically, you can dilute it and use it under the nose or on the feet bottoms again. And actually I found this quite interesting that it actually is protective against gamma radiation exposure. So use it internally. You can use it in a capsule to support antioxidant activity because high oxidation is a byproduct of gamma radiation exposure. So this chart here shows the electromagnetic spectrum all the way from visible light, which is kind of an essential, down to your microwaves and radio waves, and to the right, the gamma radiation, the ionizing radiation is the far right there. You can see the black triangle kind of structure that it shows that it's radioactive, and that's the kind of thing that it can help protect against. So this is interesting, gamma ray imaging of a container with some people hiding out trying to come in. So they use gamma rays for a number of different things, irradiation of different things, and they've using these at border crossings and things like that to image containers, and even at shipping and freight areas. And it actually shows up these stowaways in this container, and they come out, they show up pretty tightly or very, very, very plainly in this ionizing radiation. It's like X-ray essentially, which is a form of that, just at very, very low levels. It's also used in sterilizing medical equipment, so it kills living organisms of a microbiotic level, but can also have some damaging effects on whole organisms of a mammalian nature. It kills foodborne pathogens and is often used on meat, fruit, and vegetables in particular that are conventionally grown. So organic does not allow for ionizing radiation to be used in their preservation. It prevents food sprouting. So if you have some food that should sprout, like potatoes, for example, they're not. They could have been shot with either some kind of a chemical to prevent that, or they may have been irradiated. So it helps to maintain freshness of food. If it never rots, you better not. That's our mantra. We had some plums that we purchased at a big box store locally here that begins with a C at one time. And they weren't very tasty when we tasted them. They were kind of hard and we were waiting for them to ripen, and they never ripened. And we left them there for a long time. We finally just pitched them. It was over a month. They just never rotted. And it could have been because of that. If you look on most things, they will say if they've been treated with some kind of a chemical agent in the fine print. Most people don't look at the fine print. I actually was purchasing some lemons today and noticed that they are covered in a beeswax or vegetable shellac, kind of a covering on their skin, and even some wood shellac, and to help preserve them and keep them fresh during shipping, so to speak. And also sometimes they're gassed with some different things to help preserve their freshness. So I'm going to do a little further research on that personally, because I don't want to be ingesting something that is not going to be good for me, even though the lemons are. So it can be cancer causing, gamma radiation. It also can be cancer killing. So the gamma knife, for example, is an illustration of that. So body repairs from a large DNA exposure, and DNA damage so low exposure has a higher damage effect on the DNA than a high level exposure. Our body repairs better from a high gamma level ray exposure than a low level, which is interesting. So our body responds more quickly to that and better. So most of the time we're being subjected to low level gamma radiation, and that is more long-term detrimental. So Hiroshima survivors, that's the atomic bomb that was dropped on Japan, on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The survivors exposed to gamma radiation had a 32% higher cancer risk. So the byproducts are unique radiolytic products of gamma radiation that cause chromosomal damages of various types, and in lab animals stunted their growth. Also, ionizing radiation can create toxic chemicals, benzene and toluene. So these are some byproducts of gamma radiation, ionizing radiation, that peppermint and its essential oil can actually help protect against. So two species of the commonly used aromatic herb plant, Mentha piperata and Mentha arborensis, protected mice against the gamma radiation-induced sickness and mortality. Detailed investigations have also shown that the aqueous extract of Mentha piperata, so aqueous means water, so it's a tea essentially, protected the vital radiosensitive organs, the testes, gastrointestinal, hematopoietic systems in mice. So hemopoietic means the blood cell forming. So white blood cells, red blood cells, those are things that are damaged during gamma radiation exposure, but it had a protective effect on blood cell protection. And radioprotective effects, so that's radioactive material, protective effects are possibly due to free radical scavenging. So basically the radiation creates toxic oxygen byproducts that damage tissue, trying to satisfy their unbalanced electron shells. And that's what an antioxidant does. And also it may function as a metal chelator for toxic metals, and as an anti-inflammatory, we noticed that already. Anti-mutagenic, so that prevents the changing of the DNA, maybe aids repair of that. Actually, and that's what they also said, it was enhancing of the DNA repair processes. So that's Balesia MS 2010. And the two there is for the research article we'll see at the end that specifically reported that. So two different species, the Mentha piperata and the Mentha arborensis, both had those protective effects against gamma radiation. So headaches and migraines, if you apply the essential oil to your temples, above the ears, the back of the neck, and it can help mitigate the pain associated with migraines and headaches. Another way to do that too is, of course, with hydrotherapy, drawing the congestion to your feet, doing a hot foot bath, that can be helpful. Halitosis or bad breath. Everybody's probably grabbed a stick of gum from now and then, mint gum, to help brighten up their breath. But you can also do that with a little bit of drop of essential oil in a glass of water and drink it or gargle. And that can help with halitosis. asthma and sinusitis. So sinusitis is inflammation of the sinuses. Itis is always inflammation. Sinus is the cavities. Actually, a sinus is any cavity in bone in the body. We just happen to have more of those in our frontal lobe, not our lobe, but the frontal bones in our cranium of the skull, and in and around the nose. There are lots of sinuses that get clogged with mucus because they're tiny holes that the mucus is thick as it's attempting to remove the bacteria that is there, or the other antigens. So it could be pollen or grass dander, dog dander, whatever you happen to be sensitive to or allergic to, and that clogs up those holes and gives you lots of pain from a sinus headache, for example, or various types of asthma. So chest application or back application or the bottom of the feet can help with that from a topical perspective. For women, it can help decrease the milk supply if that is something that is needed. Topically applying to the breast diluted with a fraction of coconut oil, or using it internally in a capsule, several drops in a veggie cap. For people who have a loss of smell, so there was a signature sign of contracting a recent pathogen, and that was the loss of smell that could be protracted over long periods of time. And some people I'm acquainted with still haven't fully regained their smell. But this could be helpful, aromatically diffusing it or inhaling it from the bottle or the hands. My first notation of having lost my sense of smell was trying to help some congestion by breathing in my cupped hands eucalyptus, which is very bright and smelling. And I realized that I could not smell it, so I knew that I'd lost my smell. But you can also apply it over the bridge of the nose topically. Digestive discomfort and gastritis. This is from a variety of sources. It could be just from intestinal gas, but in a capsule or a glass of water, you can take it internally or rub over the abdominal area to help that discomfort. Anti-nausea. So ginger is another anti-nausea compound, but peppermint can be helpful with that too, to diffuse or inhale, so you can use it aromatically and or put beneath the nose. So this is something that we've used in our family from time to time when there's been nausea and vomiting. It can help to reduce that. We used it most often in the evening, which, looking back on that now, maybe wasn't the best thing because of the stimulatory effects of peppermint. More of a daytime use would probably be better application from a time perspective on that. Muscle pain, so helps to relax smooth muscles. So using it topically, just take 2 to 4 drops and apply it to the area of concern. So back pain, leg pain. There's actually some research done with athletes that were in events or training for use on sore muscles. And I did a long running race at one point, and had taken some peppermint tea with me as a backup for pain, as well as other things. I didn't actually have to implement or use it, but it was just something that I could carry lightly with me. And that was my thought, that I could use it for that kind of situation if needed while I was in the field. So respiratory relief, various varieties. So 2 to 4 drops that are applied to the chest and back of the neck, diluted in a carrier oil, or you can do 10 drops in boiling water and use the tent. So the picture here shows a person with a towel tent over a bowl that has had boiling water in it and some essential oil added to it. You can inhale that vapor for about 5 minutes. And this is also done with a number of different oils, oil of oregano being another one that is very helpful in helping with respiratory protection. Energy enhancement. You can diffuse it aromatically, topical application to the back of the neck, the temples, and the wrists can be helpful for helping increase energy. It's stimulating and invigorating, and it can help with people who are fighting chronic fatigue. So not necessarily chronic fatigue syndrome per se, but it could be helpful. People are just tired because of lack of sleep or for whatever other reason. It could help with that, and it can also help focus concentration capacity. So looking at some of the research associated with peppermint oil. So peppermint oil promotes hair growth without toxic signs. So that's an interesting research article from toxicology reviews, December of 2014. And then here's the research paper that looked at the radioprotective potential of mint, a brief review. So the Balija et al. In the Journal of Cancer Reviews Therapies from July to September in 2010. And then the third article is screening of the antibacterial effects of a variety of essential oils and respiratory tract pathogens using a modified dilution assay method. So they looked at this in Japan, 2001, and that's where the benefits of the tenting, inhaling the vapor of the oils in boiling water can be helpful. So the respiratory tract pathogen protective effects. And then looking at enteric-coated pH-dependent peppermint oil capsules for the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, in children. So the Journal of Pediatrics in 2001. So they found that that could be helpful for them. Cutaneous application, so cutaneous means on the skin, of menthol 10% solution as an abortive treatment of migraine without aura. So that basically that means that it can stop a migraine without the aura. So the aura is kind of this halo of light that one sees and perceives associated with an oncoming migraine. And that was noted in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled crossover study. So that's a pretty high-level study right there in the International Journal of Clinical Practice in 2010. And then antioxidant components of naturally occurring oils exhibit marked anti-inflammatory activity in epithelial cells of the human upper respiratory system. So epithelial cells are found on your skin, as well as the respiratory tract and digestive tract. So any interior cavity that has access to the exterior is going to be lined with epithelia. On the other hand, the vessels that line the blood vessels are referred to as endothelial cells. Endo means inside, epi means on top of. So even though your digestive tract and your respiratory tract are housed inside your body, they have direct connection to things coming in from the outside, and thereby are referred to as epithelial cells. So your digestive tract from your mouth all the way to the other end is lined with epithelial tissue. And antioxidant components of naturally occurring oils exhibits, I just talked about that one, good. That was a Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition actually in 2013. So that's the human upper respiratory tract. So I did just talk about that one. And then peppermint oil in the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome, IBS again, a prospective double-blind placebo-controlled randomized trial in June of 2007. And the effect of peppermint and eucalyptus oil preparations on neurophysiological and experimental algiometric headache parameters. So that's the pain sensation associated with headache. So a couple different things with IBS, a couple different things with headaches, and also the radioprotective effects from gamma radiation.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.